Coming up on Cannabis Coast to Coast News with Alaina Pinto this week, Congress admits they screwed up the 2018 Farm Bill, but put off a full federal ban on THC-infused hemp for another year. And this is the first week of the annual California State Fair, where that state celebrates 50 years since decriminalization at the Cannabis Experience. While in Ventura County, Glass House Farms gets raided by Immigration and Customs enforcers, and ICE arrests 200 allegedly illegal workers at the licensed legal cannabis and vegetable farm in Camarillo. And a Rhode Island medical MJ company has been working with the FDA on federal medical research for years until the DEA got involved. Now, MMJ International Holdings is calling for the firing of a DEA administrator who's trying to shut down that research. We have an exclusive interview with their CEO.
If the FDA approves our product, which I believe they will for Huntington's disease, I'll need 1 million square feet of growing specific strain marijuana to fill the gel caps. And that's what they don't want to happen.
All that and a story about 710 and how that pseudo-holiday of sorts for cannabis oil allows dispensaries another reason for sales and special events. All that and international state cannabis reports from coast to coast on Cannabis Coast to Coast News with Alaina Pinto. Next.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Cannabis Coast to Coast News, WPCM TV's weekly production documenting the fight to end cannabis prohibition in the United States and around the world. I'm Alaina Pinto. Subscribe to the app by scanning the QR code on the screen or go to the App Store or Google Play. When you search, make sure there's a space between PCM and TV. All right, Pro Cannabis Media is rebranding to WPCM TV, and now WPCMTV.com takes you right to the old Pro Cannabis Media website during our transition. The full rebrand will take some time, but we will continue to produce our weekly news show. So let's get going. We start our show every week with an update on federal reform. And since there is nothing but crickets coming out of Washington, D.C. as far as cannabis reform is concerned, the federal battle now is over hemp. It's the same cannabis sativa plant that was defined legal as a product if it tested at 0.3% of THC at dry weight. That was the results of the 2018 Farm Bill that Senator Mitch McConnell helped to get passed. The legal loophole that was created in that bill has led to the growth of the unregulated billion-dollar hemp industry, including intoxicating hemp products. And now McConnell admits he screwed up. This week, McConnell said, quote, "My 2018 hemp bill sought to create an agricultural hemp industry, not open the door to the sale of unregulated, intoxicating, lab-made hemp-derived substances with no safety framework." This week, the Senate Appropriations Committee passed the 2026 budget for the Agriculture, Rural Development, FDA, and Related Agencies Act. That appropriations bill was originally submitted by Maryland Congressman Andy Harris, who pushed for the new regulations to be adopted. Now, the burden of just how much THC, the intoxicating cannabinoid that gets you high, can be in the hemp plant will be in the hands of RFK Jr.'s Health and Human Services Department. Right now, the wording of this new bill includes the vague definition of hemp with a limit of a quantifiable amount of THC. We get reaction from that industry in our hemp report with Kerry Hinkle.
Hey everyone, this is Kerry Hinkle with Bayou City Hemp out of Houston, Texas, and I am back again with another hemp report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. This week, in the second week of July, we have seen yet another attempt at a ban at the federal level on the hemp industry. As reported in past weeks, the House has considered language from Chairman Andy Harris out of Maryland that would redefine the definition of hemp in the 2018 Farm Bill to include that no products can contain any quantifiable amounts of THC. And this past week, we saw the similar effort happen on the Senate side in the same Senate Agriculture Appropriations Bill. This time, and maybe most concerningly for the hemp industry, it has come by a longtime former champion of the hemp industry and Senator Mitch McConnell from my home state of Kentucky. And what's really concerning about what Mitch McConnell has been doing is that, many in Congress point to him as a champion from the 2018 version of the Farm Bill that has led to both the agriculture and consumable goods products that have spurred into a $28 billion industry. And what Senator McConnell has done this week is added very similar language to what Chairman Harris has in his House version of the bill. Now, there are a few key differences which are saving graces for now for the hemp industry. And maybe most importantly, what was mentioned in the committee hearing is that if this bill were to become law, that there would be a 1-year delay from the effective date of the bill to when the new version of the definition of hemp would become implemented. Now, there's also a few kind of inside baseball tricks to this as well, in that the Senate and House agriculture appropriations bills have not passed on their own in over a decade for large reasons outside of anything to do with hemp, cuts to SNAP and other things that we don't really concern ourselves with on this program. And so, while very unlikely that either version will end up on the president's desk as is, what can happen is a skinny or slimmed down CR or continuing resolution would happen at the end of September, and also maybe a larger package would happen at the end of the year. And these are important funding mechanisms for the food and agriculture community in the United States. And so it's important to keep these bills and funding mechanisms going. And usually what happens in the continuing resolution is that they take everything they deem that is non-controversial and throw it in the CR, sign it, and keep this thing moving. And because there are slight differences now between the House and the Senate version of the new definition of hemp, this could be the definition of non-controversial. And so they could hopefully then not add that into the CR. And so while it's a disappointing week this week to see backwards momentum at the federal level on hemp and cannabis laws, we are hopeful that the differing opinions between the two versions and the year moratorium and champions like Senator Merkley, who spoke up at the hearing saying that we have a year to get this right, will allow for some tweaks to prevent a full outright ban, because this language does ban products like full spectrum CBD as well. So tough week, but again, we've got a lot to look forward to continue to fight this long fight. So again, I'm Kerry Hinkle with Cannabis Coast to Coast News, and we'll see you next week.
Okay, so the federal government gets a mulligan for the 2018 Farm Bill with the passing of the new version for 2026, and now gives the hemp industry 1 year to comply before testing and enforcement can begin. Of course, it is now the duty of the Health and Human Services Department to interpret what a quantifiable amount of THC will be allowed in the hemp plant. And this might be a good time for someone to explain to lawmakers that the entourage effect is and how THC interacts with all the other minor cannabinoids in the plant, including CBD. But in the meantime, the DEA released their quarterly report this week on that rescheduling process. The report is a requirement by DEA Administrative Judge John Mulrooney, who put this whole rescheduling process on hold in January. The president's nominee to lead the DEA, Terrence Cole, still has not been confirmed by Congress to head up that department. Right now, Robert Murphy is the interim leader of the DEA. However, with no permanent leadership in place, much of the enforcement responsibilities are falling to deputies. One is Deputy Administrator Thomas Provoznik, who heads up a group called the Diversion Control Division. And now, a medical pharmaceutical company in Rhode Island called MMJ Biopharma is calling for Provoznik to be fired and the DEA to be overhauled. Over the past 7 years, that company has worked directly with the FDA in Washington, D.C., assuring compliance for their medical research on Huntington's disease and multiple sclerosis. MMJ International Holdings, the parent company of MMJ Biopharma, put out a news release this week asking for Provoznik to be fired because of the DEA's, quote, bureaucratic incompetence and systemic negligence bordering on malpractice. Duane Boise is the CEO of that company, and he talked with the executive producer of this news show, Jimmy Young, this week.
Thanks, Alaina. Joining me now is Duane Boise. He is the CEO of MMJ International Holdings, a company that has three different companies under it. Duane, thank you so much for joining us, and tell us a little bit about why this has been such a frustrating process for you, what you've gone through, because it sounds like you've done all the right things working with the FDA, trying to get a compliant medical product to market, and now the DEA is blocking that effort, correct?
Jimmy, a pleasure to meet you. Thanks for having me on the show.
You bet.
Cut to the chase. Three companies, as you stated.
Yeah.
MMJ International Holdings is the study company. We filed two investigational new drug applications with the Food and Drug Administration in late 17-18. And the second company, MMJ Biopharma Cultivation, applied to the Drug Enforcement Administration in 2018 to grow strain-specific cannabis in our formulation. And MMJ Biopharma Labs was the analytical lab, Schedule I license holder from the DEA, to do the analytics for the formulation to create the medicine.
Right.
So all three integrated to one goal of creating the medicine to facilitate the clinical trials
for Huntington's disease and for
multiple sclerosis,
right?
primary progressive, right?
And I want to point out that you started this effort when cannabis was it still is a Schedule 1, but it was even before the Farm Bill in 2018. If it was, am I right on that?
That's correct. Yeah.
So this isn't a hemp versus marijuana thing or MJ thing. This is a Schedule 1 substance that you were trying to do clinical trials, and you were working with the FDA on this, correct?
Right. I just want to be clear here.
Yep.
I am an advocate, and what I say shouldn't be taken out of context. I understand the legal aspects of what we're doing, but we made a determination early on that the only way to do it federally legal as a Schedule 1, we don't care if it reschedules or legalizes or any of that, it makes no matter to us, is to do it the way the laws were on the books at the time.
Right.
And that's what we did.
Right. And then we got to a point where you went through the whole process. You were working with the FDA. They gave you some approvals at some point to keep you going. Yes.
In the Huntington's study, they gave us a orphan designation, which is significant. It took a lot of work for the team to get there. And what that does is give us a de facto patent for 7 years on the approved final dose medicine.
Yeah.
And it gives us $1 million or $2 million to offset some of the expense of the clinical trials. And but we decided to go that way versus filing all these patents, because the government actually defends our patent once the medicine is approved. Once that medicine is approved, also, I'll make a note that we would force the DEA to take it from a Schedule 1 to maybe a 3 or a 4.
Yeah.
As a result of the approval. Yeah.
Right. And then what happened? How did we get to the point where you guys finally said, you know what? The DEA is incompetent. I think that was one of the words you used, right? Negligence, incompetence. And to me, it's a lesson I've learned. The government's very good at creating delays for any progress, it seems to be. And you're right in the middle of it.
I come from a law enforcement family, so maybe I'm naive here. And as it turns out, I probably was, to think that they were operating in good faith, because all the roadblocks they were putting in front of us just didn't make any sense. So I could go all the way back to the initial investigation when they came out to inspect the security systems and the vault. I had a 10 by 20 DEA approved vault in the building. And this particular investigator, Tom Cook out of Providence, came out, and he looked like the refrigerator repairman bending over on the floor. And he went down to the town hall and looked at the concrete on the base of the vault and determined that the concrete wasn't deep enough with rebar because of what the first architectural plans were for the building. He forced us, instead of putting, the law says you would have to dig it out and comply, or you could put electronic sensors there. The theory is if somebody's going to blow the bottom floor of the vault, it would set off alarms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Tom Cook makes us dig up the whole floor of the vault, report to the specifics, redo the rebar. And every time he was on the phone telling me what to do, I said, but Tom, the reg says, and you can use electronic devices, he goes back and reads the first line and would never acknowledge what I was saying to him.
That whole interview with Duane Boise and Jimmy Young will be released on Thursday of this week. One of the things that has happened during the DEA rescheduling delays is that state testing labs are coming under fire. 18 legal states have recalled tested products with fraudulent results. This puts the public at risk when those contaminated products reach the shelves at legal adult use dispensaries. 2 weeks ago in Massachusetts, the Cannabis Control Commission shut down assured testing labs after a series of false reports and a whole slew of violations. Assured Testing Labs is now fighting the CCC's suspension in court with a lawsuit claiming they did nothing wrong and was just following the testing rules for the state. We'll have more on the challenges of testing labs later in the show. But now let's check in with Tina Tasaka, who has the story of the next adult use state to open their doors in Minnesota. But now that state has given an Indigenous tribe their right to open a store outside of their jurisdiction. Here's Tina.
I'm Tina Tasaka with 420 Technologies, and this is the Nevada and Tribal Nations Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. On July 2nd, the White Earth Nation opened its second off-reservation recreational cannabis dispensary, Wobigwan Mesquite in St. Cloud, Minnesota, which drew a bustling crowd even before its 10 a.m. ribbon cutting. Zach Wilson, Tribal Cannabis CEO, praised the historic Tribal State Compact signed by Governor Tim Walz in late May, which permits up to 8 dispensaries statewide. Earlier, on May 23rd, the tribe debuted its first off-reservation shop in Moorhead, parts of their strategy to bring seed to sale, grown and made cannabis to more communities. Tribal Chair Michael Fairbanks emphasized the dispensaries as vital for serving users focused on wellness and reinforcing strong tribal sovereignty. The excitement was palpable. Customers and bud tenders alike thrilled to mark Minnesota's next big step in legal cannabis expansion. Legislation season is a wrap in Nevada, and here's the rundown pertaining to the new Assembly and Senate bills that impact the Cannabis Compliance Board, CCB. I will just summarize a few of the highlights. Senate Bill 25, effective now, authorizes state fire marshal to enforce cannabis production facility regulations. Assembly Bill 76, effective upon passage, CCB-sponsored bill with administrative fixes, including compliant process updates, hemp regulation studies, cannabis tax reviews, and changes to holds, testing, packaging, and labeling. Workshops are being planned for August. Assembly Bill 504, effective October 1, targets unlicensed hemp sales with signage, requirements, and bans misleading statements. CCB enforcement to develop regulations with investigations referred to the Attorney General. Senate Bill 157, effective October 1, requires CCB regulations for cannabis testing, specifying lot sizes, 5 to 15 pounds, and sample sizes, 10 grams, aligning with ASM standards via workshops. In total, there were 6 bills having impact. That's it for the Nevada highlights and Tribal Nations. I'm Tina Tasaka with 420 Technologies and Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
That will do it for the A Block, our first section of Cannabis Coast to Coast News this week. Next, we check out the celebration of 50 years of decriminalization in the Golden State of California, where the California State Fair is embracing the legal market with a designed cannabis experience. Cannabis Coast to Coast News continues after this.
Counting Buds has grown into Buds Group, the same award-winning quality, now with more service offerings. Buds Group, your best buds in the biz.
Looking for PR that over-delivers on expectations? At Maverick Public Relations, they pair big agency experience with personalized attention. From launching award-winning brands to securing top-tier media hits, their data-driven communications team helps visionary leaders and entrepreneurs rise above the media noise. Maverick PR is responsive, collaborative, and relentless about results and ROI. Visit themaverickpr.com and make headlines together.